Welcome back to It's Not a Sport. Alright, and welcome back to It's Not a Sport, episode 21, the season finale of It's Not a Sport. This will be our last episode for the year, so of course we're going to spend it talking about this year and how it went and, just gaming and best games of the year and esports and so to speak, and just covering as much as we can. So let's hop right into esports so we can get right into the news and talk about the year, because there is a lot of juicy news this year, or this week, my bad, talking about Nintendo Direct and BlizzCon was happening. So moving on to esports, the League of Legends World Championship wrapped up. In the finals, it was EU's Fnatic versus LPL's Invictus Gaming. Invictus Gaming completely 3-0'd Fnatic, and they are the championship of 2018 League of Legends World Championship. So it was a brutal game. If we talk about the game for a second, it was to be expected, in my opinion. If you just Fnatic, you want them to win, I guess, kind of, if you're a Western fan, because they're the underdog, and they haven't won a game since Season 1 Worlds, which didn't really count as Worlds back then. And it would have been cool, if they won. But in reality, China's just too strong as a region, and Rookie and their Invictus Gaming solo laners are just completely insane. And they just completely swept Fnatic. I mean, we haven't had... In the last couple of years, most of the world finals have been like Korea versus Korea, and a lot of those games go like 3-2. But we haven't had a finals that just was gone. They didn't stand a chance. They put up a better fight. They put up a fight, but it just was not enough. IG was just crazy. And the other, an Overwatch League, they also wrapped up at BlizzCon this week, and I believe they played the last game today. I was not able to watch those games, but South Korea came in first place, so they are the champions. Congratulations to the South Korean team. Second place is China, and third is Canada. Overwatch League has been... I believe this is the second year of Overwatch League, kind of the second year, and it's been incredibly successful. It's much... I don't want to say bigger than League of Legends League and all their esports, but it has a lot more room to grow, and it's very exciting to see this grow and to see it play out. They just added a new spectator client where it chooses you, the player, to actually be able to spectate the game and move the camera the way you want it instead of watching the stream, which is a huge installment for the esports scene for Overwatch, because it makes the biggest problem with Overwatch was always how hard it is to watch. It's just difficult to follow what's going on, and it's not interesting to watch, a support or whatever. And with that power in the hands of the viewer, it's fantastic, because even analysts and coaches that do that for a living can now view it in a different format. So anyway, let's get on to our next segment. We're going to be talking about just summing up this year in terms of gaming, but we're first going to start with the news and announcements. Let's move on. Alright, so first up, let's start with a little quick It's Not a Sport update. This is the Season 1 final for the year, so this will be our last episode for the year. And then I do plan doing on a bonus episode around Christmas time, and then we'll start back up in January. around this time, this is where a lot of the game stuff starts to wrap up, and we start, uh, just calling out game of the year and just seeing how the game went. Especially with esports wrapping up now, and basically the two major leagues now done. It's with, I think, the only event with league coming up next will be All Stars during the off season, and some updates are in preseason. But we'll cover all those once we're back, or maybe in the bonus episode. Now, I'm just going to move right on to announcements, starting with the Smash Direct. So if you didn't know, this week Nintendo had a live stream talking about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which will come out next month, I believe. They announced the two last starting roster characters, which will be Ken and Incineroar. Incineroar is from the newest generation of Pokemon, which I believe is either 8 or 7. He was one of the starter Pokemons in Sun and Moon, the third stage of the Fiery Cat. I think it's called like Lynx or something. I forget that Pokemon's name. My bad. It's been a while since I played that game. And then Ken, obviously from Street Fighter. So the total roster will be 74 characters, starting with Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and then we get, DLC on top of that. It will have a story mode called World of Light, so to speak. There was a kind of a trailer of this, I think, which was like all the Super Smash Bros. Roster kind of staring up at the sky with giant hands kind of come down and attack them. So it's, we'll see what it's like. Other than that, they also announced their kind of first post-launch character, which will be Piranha Plant. Surprisingly, it's very interesting that they would add this character. If you're confused, I was too until I saw it. But just to clear things up, it's the Piranha Plant enemy from Mario Bros. That's who they're adding to Super Smash Bros. I believe, from what I'm looking at, it will cost $6 unless you have the Fighter's Pass, which is $25, which probably is just a season pass. It says the Fighter Pass will also include an outfit based on Rex from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. If you haven't played Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and you own a Switch, I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic game. Other than that, that was kind of it. It's good to see Nintendo hyping the game up, telling us what we are going to get, and I absolutely cannot wait for it. It looks like it was a lot of fun when I played it at the E3, and I expect it to even be crazier and playing it on the go wherever I want on my Switch. Oh, yeah, that just sounds super fun. Super fun. Especially, like, I can imagine, like, if you're in a a city with probably a lot of Switches, like I live in Chicago, so there's got to be, like, I can probably just run into somebody while I'm waiting for the train, and we could just have a match or something like that. So that's probably, like, a super fun. Or just when I'm at school, I can just be like, hey, you want to play Super Smash Bros. With me? Let's go, if I have my Switch. So, looking forward to that. Let's move on to BlizzCon, because I've said it before. I believe I've said it before. Blizzard has always been a a problem company for me, where besides in the last maybe decade or so, and I can't really remember, but let's say since like 2010, right, or 2008, they haven't really come out with any new original, I would say, IPs besides Overwatch. Overwatch is the only game where that I can think, wow, that is their game. Like, they didn't really, they kind of stole it from TF2, but I think that, like, it was needed where it's like, okay, we can update TF2, or we can take the same idea as TF2 and just make it better. That's my problem with Blizzard, is that they just take other people's ideas and they just make it better. But they're so big now that they can do that. Same with Hearthstone. Hearthstone was just Magic, because there was no magic for the PC or for computer, just good magic online until now when they made Arena. So now like Hearthstone's just kind of, I would say, I don't know, I'm not in the Hearthstone community, but probably dying out because people are just going to play Magic Arena. So, with that in mind, we hop right on to BlizzCon 2018. The first announcement that they announced is Warcraft 3 remastered. For me, this is good and bad. One, Warcraft, so you have to understand why Warcraft 3 is kind of a big game, other than setting up a lot of like World of Warcraft, like setting up WoW after it. The reason why it's a big game for me is because it was kind of the original MOBA, you know? It's the original RTS. StarCraft and, you know, Dota came from Warcraft 3, I believe. They were mods, and people modded Warcraft 3, and then eventually, you know, they became their own games. And that's why Warcraft 3 is a big deal to me, is because it jump-started, it was the foundation of a lot of the kind of big competitive esports games that we have now. Now here's the negative side of it for me, is that Warcraft 3 is before my time, so I've never played it. But getting another remaster of Warcraft 3, I don't really know how much people wanted to see Warcraft 3 remastered. But getting it remastered is just kind of like, especially where I see Blizzard and they don't really have, you know, any new IPs or any new things going for them, and they just kind of recreate old things. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, here we go again. They're out of ideas, so they're just like, okay, guys, we need something new this year. What are we thinking? Why don't we just recreate something we did before? Great idea, let's do it. So that's kind of my problem with Warcraft 3 being remastered. But then again, I've never played Warcraft 3, so, you know, who knows. Other than that, Overwatch released a new cinematic called Reunion with McCree and a robot character and their new hero, Ash. We'll get to Ash for a second, because I want to talk about the animated short. If you haven't watched the animated short, it is absolutely fantastic, and I think it's one of the best ones that they've done yet. I love Overwatch animated shorts because they provide a lot. They grow the Overwatch world, which I think is interesting, because I think they do a good, like, as I think the game mechanically is a kind of a copy of TF2, but I think the world itself is so interesting when it comes to Overwatch, and the shorts really grow that. And I think this is the best one, at least lore-wise, that they've had since maybe like Bridget, that, you know, they've had in a while. It also kind of revealed probably a hero that's going to be coming later. I think her name's Echo. She's an Omnic robot chick that's apparently in the pod that you transport in Route 66. This isn't the first time they did this. They did this with Doomfist, and they did and when you were in Zimbabwe. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that map right. The thing you were transporting to the museum was Doomfist's, you know, gauntlet arm. So this isn't the first time they did this, but it's, you know, cool because it grows the world, and maybe it's like, oh, wait, we're transferring something important and not just, you know, a package or a bomb or whatever. The new hero is called Ash. She's cowboy, kind of sniper, shotgun, leader of a gang. I kind of looked at her and thought of her as basically Caitlyn from League. And it's really hard not to copy League because, you know, they're the first and they kind of done a whole lot and they've done everything. Just like, you know, kind of the movie business and all. But, you know, she looks cool, she looks fun. I've seen gameplay of her. She has like a shotgun that knocks her back and knocks her up. Now that I think about it, just like Caitlyn's net, but kind of more mechanically. She has dynamite that she throws out that apparently applies super big AoE and a huge burn. And then her alt is called Bob, and it's just a giant mech, and he just comes out and kind of just disrupts the fight. I think of it as also Borderlands from the Mechanist in Borderlands, how she just throws out that mech and just completely goes and destroys everything. But she looks a whole lot of fun. She's related to McCree. She's the second, I think, American hero in the game. I kind of, well, not, that's not true, because Soldier and all that, but I kind of was hoping that she wouldn't be like Cowboy Southern 3, but I think they kind of did this because they're also kind of riding off the Red Dead Redemption hype, which is pretty funny in my opinion. Other than that, we got Diablo Immortal gameplay. I honestly have no idea what this is. I think it's a new IP, surprisingly, but it's in the Diablo universe, and it says it takes place between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. I've kind of seen a lot of people be mad at this. It's not... Oh, it's a mobile-only game, too. Oh, God. They come out with, like, a new Diablo or say something about Diablo every year. I think what people are, like, wanting is Diablo 4, but they do this every year. And I feel like a lot of people are like, if you're still playing Diablo, I don't know why you are, because I feel like a lot of people just go play Path of Exiles instead. They're kind of the similar game, but Path of Exiles is newer and keeps being updated. I've never been big on Diablo. It just, I know people are mad about this, and it just kind of seems weird too. Yeah, other than moving on, Hearthstone, it's probably looks like it's getting like another kind of expansion or something at it. But this is, it's an online card game. It gets expansions like every 6 months, so to be expected. That kind of sums up. Oh, here's the biggest announcement. My bad. World of Warcraft Classic. World of Warcraft is coming out in the summer of 2019. So, if you were back in 2003, 2004, were addicted to World of Warcraft, just OG World of Warcraft without all the expansions, and you've been requesting it for years, for 14 years, right? And Battle of Azeroth, which is, I think, was a fun, kind of good expansion, but I just kind of jumped right into Battle for Azeroth, so I don't really know how to rate it to, but people have been, I think, thinking that it was good, but it wasn't amazing. Now, if you play WoW now and you have a WoW subscription, welcome back to the good old days, because WoW World of Warcraft Classic is coming back. So, that is kind of the sum of this year's BlizzCon. I think there was some good and some bad. Nothing fantastic, but that's, great. So, let's just hop on right into what I would think would be kind of game of the year. But to do that, we're going to have to look at the releases for this year. And we're just going to start from this month and then work our way back. So in the month of November, we had the Quiet Man. We have Diablo 3 Eternal Collection for the Switch. Overkill's The Walking Dead, which is Overkill's the company that makes Payday, and this is kind of like their zombie Payday, I guess. Bride 3. Hitman 2 comes out November 13th. Sporos Regenant Trilogy, so that's the dragon, the purple dragon. That's a famous old school, I think like PS1, PS2 game that Activision has remade. Civ 6 for the Switch. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee for the Switch. Battlefield 4. Warframe for the Switch. Probably the game that I'm looking forward to for this year is Darksiders 3. And probably the biggest, which I missed, which comes out November 14th, is Fallout 76. So, Fallout 76 beta, I think, was out last week, or it's a closed beta, and it's been out. I haven't heard much about it, but I did watch one dude's opinion on it, and he said that it was absolutely awful. I would personally, before I even saw the video, I wasn't planning on buying this game. I don't think it was. I think it's a cool idea, but I think it's kind of a cheesy move by Bethesda, where instead of making a whole new Fallout game, they kind of reuse Fallout 4 assets or something like that, and kind of make a multiplayer game, which doesn't really work because it's kind of like, you know, some people may want a PvE, but then some people may want a PvP, and you know, and the mission system, it's just kind of like they would have to redo the entire Fallout premise to get it to work. Yeah, that's really it. I mean, I was not planning on buying it. Now that it's out, or it's coming out, we'll see how it does. But who knows? Let's move on to December. Just moving up into the future. Just Cause 4. TJ Nakano, we've had him on the show a couple of times, and I believe in the past, during our E3 show, we talked about this. Just Cause 4, he is a kind of a big game for him. It's interesting to see them bring it back, but Just Cause is just one of those funny like games, like Saints Row, in my opinion, where it's just kind of fun to fuck around in. Other than that, Persona 3 and Persona 4 and Persona 5, Dancing the Moonlight, Dancing All Night, Dancing in the Stars. It's kind of like they're all for the PS4 and kind of PS Vita. They're all, if you haven't played the Persona games, this is what I have to say about this. You haven't played the Persona games, their soundtracks are absolutely amazing. They're fucking fantastic. You can jam to those every day, all day. And I think Atlas realizes this, and they decide to make dancing games out of those 4 games soundtracks, because Persona 3, Persona 4, and Persona 5, I'm gonna go back and play. I think Persona 4 was hailed the best Persona, but Persona 5 is what I played. It's really saved my summer, I would say, and that soundtrack was part of the reason I could keep playing that game over and over again. It was literally bopping. After that, on December 7th, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate comes out. Probably the biggest highlight of December. Then we have Earth Defending Forces 5, Dragon Marked for Death, and that wraps up this year. That's basically it. So let's go back to kind of the beginning. Highlight the big ones for each month. And then I'll talk about Game of the Year based on my perspective, based on what I haven't played and what I have played. So, this year, we kicked it off back in January with, I would say, not a whole lot. Dragon Ball Z Fighters came out, was probably the biggest fighting game. Earlier, there was also kind of the arcade edition of Street Fighter 5. I think those, came out, and they were kind of big hits, but they weren't, super hits. I think probably the biggest game that came out that month was Monster Hunter World. I didn't get to play it, but my friend told me it was a lot of fun. And I don't doubt it. I feel like it would be a lot of fun if you had, people to play with. In February, we got a Final Fantasy game. We got Civilization 6 expansion, but not a whole lot. Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2 for the Switch. Metal Gear Survival, which I heard, not a whole lot about. Payday 2 for the Switch. So not a whole lot. In February and March, we got Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition. Another great Square Enix, Devil May Cry HD Collection. Another great Square Enix, Assassin's Creed Rogue Remastered. Sea of Thieves was probably the big one for that month, which came out, and Far Cry 5. So there was kind of 2 big ones for that month with kind of small underdogs like Outlast too. Sea of Thieves, I remember when it came out, I didn't get to play Sea of Thieves, but it was People liked it. It was fun, but there was a whole lot of problems with it and not a lot of content, which is what it suffered from. Far Cry 5 is like they come with another Far Cry game every year, so whatever. April, I would say the biggest game release for this month was God of War. Definitely. The small ones would be South Park: The Fractured But Whole. Funny. It was a fun game. Yakuza 6. Yakuza games are always fun. And the Nintendo Labo stuff came out, which was kind of a flop. But the biggest one was God of War. I did get to play God of War. If you haven't gotten to play God of War, go play God of War. It is fantastic. I just can't describe it. It's great storytelling. It pulls you into the world of not only Kratos and his son, but also it pulls you in the world of Norse mythology. And just the way they write it and just the way they play it is so... It's a great game. Even the soundtrack is just hard, heavy hitting. Like, whew! Yeah. God of War is definitely one of the top games of the year, and in my opinion, I haven't finished playing. I bought Red Dead Redemption, and that's, I think, maybe a runner-up, and I haven't really finished it, and it's kind of meh for me right now, but I haven't really gotten into it that much, and Spider-Man, but God of War for me is probably game of the year. If you haven't gone and played God of War, I highly recommend. God of War was such a good game. So I don't want to spoil it because you just got to experience it. The combat and just everything, the puzzles, the story, it just pulls you in. Moving on to May. May didn't have a whole lot. Just some small titles. Hyrule Warriors, some Mega Mans. There are a lot of releases, but not a whole lot of releases, like big releases. In June, we had Vampire. I heard that was a pretty fun game. Unravel 2, fun little indie game. Hollow Knight for the Switch. The Lost Child. Mario Tennis was probably the big one for the Switch that back in June. Fortnite Battle Royale was also big. That released for the Switch in June. Fun little games, and Crash Bandicoot: The Insane Trilogy released for the Xbox One, PC, and Switch back in June. Far Cry 3 Classic Edition as well. The Crew, and Wolfenstein: The New Colossus for the Switch. So again, early in the year, just a lot of kind of remakes. The big one probably being Mario Tennis. In July, we didn't have a whole lot of releases. No Man's Sky came to the Xbox One. We had a Sonic. We had a Warhammer. We had a Titan Quest, but not a Oh and Hello Neighbor, I think was officially released back in June. And Octopath Traveler was the big one for the Switch, but not super big AAA titles. In August, we had Yakuza 0 for the PC, Overcooked 2. Overcooked's a really fun game, especially if you have friends to play it, and especially on the Switch where you can just bring it anywhere. Monster Hunter World for the PC came out in August. Other than that, not a whole lot. Some Naruto and some Divinity Original Sin was released, for other platforms. In September, we got the Destiny 2 Forsaken DLC. We got PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds for the Xbox One. We got Spider-Man, which would be the big one for that month. Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which I think would be another big one. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 DLC. South Park Stick of Truth for the Switch. Dragon Ball Z for the Fighter for the Switch. Life is Strange Episode 1. And FIFA. Generally in September is when the gaming community starts to kind of pick up and we get to see a lot more releases. Spider-Man was probably the biggest one of this month. Spider-Man was a lot of fun. If you listen to our last episode, I beat it, it's our Spider-Man episode. The storytelling was superb, I think, in Spider-Man. I beat it and the DLC a couple days ago. And I enjoyed Spider-Man. I thought swinging around and the combat was a lot more smoother than it was at E3, and it felt good. I thought that the storytelling for the original game was good, and I thought the storytelling for the DLC was good but short. They kind of just cut it off, and you're just like, well, you gotta wait until the next DLC to kind of continue it. When the next DLC hasn't even been announced or kind of shown off, so it's a little bit disappointing, and a lot of the side missions were redundant. But all in all, it was a good game. October, which was last month, we saw Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Mario Party, Red Dead Redemption 2, Black Ops 4. Those are probably the biggest ones. Soul Calibur 6 as well. Dark Souls Remastered got a lot of remastered. My take, going down the list, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, growing off of Assassin's Creed Origins. I haven't gotten to play it. Didn't hear a whole lot about it, but it's super good. Super Mario Party, any game that's a fun party game for the Switch, I highly I welcome it. Black Ops 4, I think completely took over PUBG in terms of Battle Royale. Soul Calibur 6, I know that the character creation is a whole lot of fun, and that's what people are doing in that. And Red Dead Redemption 2. I just started Red Dead. It is GTA meets Breath of the Wild meets Cowboys, is how I would sum it up so far. I'm enjoying it. My biggest problems are the mechanics. There are a lot of mechanics to remember right off the bat. And the, tutorial text just kind of flies by, and I don't really know what to do, and the movement's kind of slow, but that's why I said it's like they're trying to make it, I guess, more as realistic as possible. Yeah, and that kind of sums up for the year, and we already went over November, December, and the end of the year. So, game of the year for me is definitely God of War. If you haven't played God of War, go check it out, because it is a fantastic game. Everything is polished. Every portion of the game is polished, and although it's linear, it feels open world. You can go explore anything, you can fight anything, and it's very different from old God of War games with their traditional hack and slash. It doesn't feel like that. It's continuing, I think. They tried a new formula, and it worked out perfectly. That formula, just throwing your axe around with the combat, and just how the head, which I believe the character's name is Gilmir. I forget, because I played the game back in April. But him telling you stories of Freya and, the Norse gods, and just filling you in all the Norse gods lore perfectly fits. Just pulls you into the story even more. And then Kratos, and just how, hard, rock Kratos is, being, interacting with kind of his soft, kind of confused, want to discover the world, want to kind of grow up son, and their interaction as father and son, trying to deliver his mother's ashes to the tallest mountain in all the realms, is just a fantastic way of telling the story. And PS4 kind of likes this. They did this with The Last of Us, and I think they're going to do it kind of again with maybe The Last of Us Part 2. But that kind of sums up the releases for this year. In terms of esports for this year, I think we saw a fairly competitive year in both the Overwatch League and League of Legends. In League of Legends, it was kind of a change, like a new era kind of started, where Korea, fell, and they were no longer the dominant region, and a lot of other regions became crazy. For example, Invictus Gaming, I think, went 32-1 total over both splits, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then they go on to win the world championship. That's ridiculous. NA for this instance had a huge, like a hard time because this is the first year that we franchised. So there was a hard time with a whole bunch of roster changes and just like, the game kind of not going in our favor. So now that and then we make it to semifinals. So that's like completely, insane in terms of league esports. And then next year, now EU's franchising, and a lot of people's favorite teams, like for example, Unicorn of Love will not be in the EU LCS anymore. So and Riot's taking over the LCK, and they're building some sort of LCK studio there. So a lot of changes this year, and a lot of changes to come next year. In terms of the Overwatch League, it's growing. It's good to see it grow. However, they have to work out things just as Riot does, but they have to work out things with watching games and getting viewership and all that, because it is hard to watch Overwatch games, and they've already on the step of that, like I talked earlier about the spectating system. So it's good to kind of see them implement that and, move and try to evolve Overwatch, but we'll see where the Overwatch League goes, because it can only go bigger. Well, I feel like the League of Legends scene can only go smaller now, especially with the introduction of Fortnite. The companies that definitely won this year would be Epic Games. Fortnite is huge here in North America, at least. I think overseas it's not as big, which is understandable, and I personally am not a fan of Fortnite. You can see why it's not big, but especially with the younger audience and just how our mentality is, where we're not really, driven to win, I would say, over here. Fortnite is just a super big game, and it's super big, and my cousin plays it, and it's just interesting to see how Fortnite interacts with kids his age at 11, where they just love the emotes and they love the flashy kind of kiddish, memeish skins and everything. So Fortnite definitely won this year. Would I call that game of the year because it was not in the kind of the quarter release of last year? No, I would not call it game of the year. I don't think it meets the requirements to call it game of the year, but it's definitely, in terms of competitiveness or multiplayer, it's definitely wins that category. So Epic Games definitely wins with that. In terms of personalities in esports who definitely won this year would be Ninja, of course, because he's riding off the Fortnite hype, and they complement each other. Ninja's big, Ninja's safe, he's very safe, so, and because of that, people invest in him, and he plays Fortnite, and Fortnite's big, Fortnite's safe, I guess, in some regards, so they kind of bounce off each other. Ninja, to me, is the new PewDiePie. When YouTube was the Wild Wild West back in 2010, PewDiePie came and he took over YouTube. For the longest time, he was king of YouTube. Everyone watched his content. I was never a fan of him, but he was in the right place at the right time. And again, he was safe. I'm gonna let you define safe, but he was safe, and people liked him, so people invested in him. He got a little YouTube series. Then he started to die down. Twitch started becoming bigger. YouTube started to fuck up. Nobody really likes YouTube anymore, and when creating content, so he died kind of as well with YouTube. And then he started saying outrageous stuff with the Jews and the N-word on stream. So he died. Here comes the rise of Twitch. Here comes the rise of Fortnite. Here comes Ninja being at the right place at the right time again, being very skillful at the game, being very safe. Boom, he's the new PewDiePie. Um, that's what Ninja is to me. That's what Twitch is to me. If you're a game creator, it's a lot easier to create content on Twitch than it is on YouTube nowadays. And and Ninja's basically replaced PewDiePie, and it could have been Myth. Myth was definitely, he had everything that Ninja had, besides being less safe, and turns out he wasn't safe, and that's why I think he fell off, and that's why towards now he's not as popular, not as famous, and people don't watch him as much. That kind of sums up who was the best of the year. In terms of anime and animation, anime is a tough category, because for me, it's kind of same with movies and TV shows, where it comes down to the storytelling. And I feel like a lot of this anime and manga as well, you can group those together, there's a lot, and it was bad this year. It was bad because we're seeing, I believe the genre is called Ikusai or something. It's basically, to sum it up, it's when you die or something happens to you and you get summoned to another world. There was a shit ton of that this year. Where if I go on, whatever manga site I go on, or whatever manga site you go on, it's just nothing but like other world, 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 and it's disappointing. And that's kind of the same with anime, where I feel like now anime is like fan fiction, fanfare, where they're not trying to tell a cool story like Cowboy Bebop or anything like that. It's just like, really cringy stuff. So I had a hard time with anime this year, but that's kind of the gist of it. There are two big ones that I would tie for anime of the year, so to speak. And here's my advice, first off. If you ever want to create any type of show, any type of movie, any type of animation, any type of TV show, go to Netflix or go to Amazon, because they will pay you, and they have the budget and the firepower to do it, and they're willing to do it, and they're looking to do it, and you get great products like Violet Evergarden and Devilman Crybaby. These two animations were absolutely fantastic. Their soundtrack's fantastic. The way they're animated, fantastic. The way they're written, fantastic. So fantastic that these two, I cannot name which one would be better. I loved them both. They emotionally pulled me in. I felt, the sad emotion of Violet Evergarden kind of learning what, love meant. And then from Devilman Crybaby, him feeling, everyone's sadness and why can't, people love each other. If you haven't watched these, go watch them, because they're super fucking good, and they just emotionally pull you in, and it's the definition of a good story. On the other hand, the runner-up would be, I can't even pronounce this, Mahogo Low Boxing. I know I whiffed that. It was the boxing anime, where they all used gears, which was like metal. It was kind of, I think it was made by the same dude or someone who worked on Cowboy Bebop. But that would be my runner-up. That was just a good story, a good, boxing story. And we get Creed coming out on Thanksgiving. So, if you're looking for another good boxing story, or you like the Creed or Rocky series, that was a good animation. And that's what I recommend you watch. Those three were probably the best anime of this entire year. The rest was kind of meh. Yeah, I don't know. It was hard. We just kind of saw a lot of good anime, and I guess the other runner-up would be Hero Academy or My Hero Academia. I'm not a fan of that series so much. I read the manga. I never watched the anime, but I read the manga, to like maybe like whatever the number they're at now. I'm probably like 50 or so pages behind. For me, this manga, it's good, but what it really is for me is Naruto filler. Naruto ended. People wanted a new Naruto. You know, they wanted something to fill that void. So, and Hero Academia again was at the right place at the right time. It's a shonen. There you go. So it kind of filled a lot of that Naruto void, and I feel like that's what it is for a lot of people, is just filling up the void of that Naruto left. Same in terms of manga that also kind of left was Tokyo Ghouls, which is probably my favorite manga of all time. It ended this year, and it was sad to see that go, but it ended on a good note, and it's a fantastic, fantastic manga that I recommend you go read. Do not watch. Read it, because Ishta's illustrations are fantastic, and it's just ridiculous where that series went. Like, it's one of those series where you just gotta read twice just to, you know, fully grasp the idea of what is going on in that series. So those are kind of the animes of this year. In terms of movies, I don't go to the movies a lot. It's hard to say what would be the best movie. Because I feel like a lot of movies these days are just kind of tropes of like the same old, and Marvel's just kind of set like a new standard for movies. So it's really hard to talk about movies, but we're going to skip over that. Same with music, where I think there's so much, for music it's the opposite, where like where movies, there's just so many bad movies that it's hard to talk about the good ones. For music, there's so much good music that it's hard to talk about bad, good music. Like, it's a lot of good albums came out this year. I think the biggest audience is that if I follow the rap audience a lot, and I think that changed a lot this year with a lot of new, it's been changing, but this was the year that I think impacted it most, with a lot of just kind of new, kind of small town rappers kind of making the same music, but just kind of coming out of nowhere, like Little Pump, and I can't even remember, there's so many like Littles and Youngs now, and it's just kind of like, it's weird how they just kind of popped out all this year. That kind of wraps up this year's show of It's Not a Sport. I hope you guys enjoyed this show and the previous shows. If you ever want to listen to previous shows, you can find them all on the YouTube channel. They're all uploaded. So go to town and listen to those. We have a lot of good information to offer. I can't wait for the bonus episode. If to look forward to, my plan for the bonus episode is to name, just talk about must-play games, must-play movies, maybe must-play animes and all that to watch. And that, I plan to do that each year, and that will be updated each year, because there are a lot of good games that are must-played and a lot of good games that I'm playing now. If you're interested to hear what I'm playing now, I'm playing Red Dead Redemption 2, Final Fantasy 6, and then I want to start Undertale. So, a lot of, I just want to, place those games maybe on a list, maybe unranked, and just, if you ever need a recommendation to watch something or to play something, just always refer to that episode each year. And then we'll be back in January to talk about all the, what we expect 2019 to look like, because we'll probably see the end of the PlayStation and Xbox One's life cycle, and the Switch maybe to grow even more. So thank you for listening to It's Not a Sport, Season 1, and I hope to find you all next year in Season 2. Thank you. Thanks for watching It's Not a Sport. Check out the links in the description where you can find everything and all sources of It's Not a Sport. Also check out the stream where you can find some quality content. This is Salty Waffles signing off, and tune in next week for another great episode.